Hello ladies and gentlemen and movie lovers of all kind, and welcome back to another new release review. And for today, we will be covering the final installment in Fox's X-Men franchise, Dark Phoenix. So as per usual, let's hop right into it. The first positive is going to be the three performances that you probably expected to be the best in the movie. Those being James McAvoy, Michael Fassbender, and Sophie Turner. I mean, James McAvoy and Michael Fassbender are terrific in everything they do. Even movies that are garbage, they are still by far the highlight. But the one that surprised me the most was Sophie Turner. Now I know the girl can act, but I just wasn't expecting much from her. In Apocalypse, I just felt she was very bland and didn't have a whole lot to do, but I think that comes down to the writing and the material she was given. In this movie, she's given a lot to do and she really showcases her talents, and being an actually really solid villain and having great emotional moments. Next up is the action in this movie, because I actually found it to be extremely enjoyable. Is it the best in the franchise or superhero movies in general? Absolutely not, but there is a certain charm to it. Although it's primarily the sequences where it's mutants on mutants, because when you see extremely overpowered mutants just taking on a bunch of faceless soldiers, that stuff's boring. But when you see the mutants clashing and you see how their abilities balance each other out, how they have to try to counter one another and figure each other out, that stuff is super exciting. And I also felt that the final sequence with the train was actually really good. I mean, seeing it in the trailer, I was like, alright, that looks really bland, and hearing that they actually did the reshoots in order to do that scene, because originally the final sequence was supposed to take place in space, but they felt that was just too outlandish, and especially I feel like when they got wind that Disney was going to buy Fox and this was going to be the last movie, they changed the ending overall. But I am happy to report that I actually felt the train sequence was quite exhilarating and by far the best moments of the movie. Next is an obvious one when you look at who the composer is. It's my man Hans Zimmer. The score is amazing in typical Zimmer fashion, but I feel like there are a few times where the score is bigger than the movie. Like you have this big, epic, grand score playing, but just the scene doesn't really seem to match it. Again though, that's only a few moments, but the score overall is wonderful. Next is the main storyline in this movie. There are a few other subplots that I will touch on later, but the main storyline I actually thought was really well executed. Although there are a few tonal shifts here and there and the pacing's a bit off at points, I actually found the main plot to be really well done. Second to last on the positives is I felt that every character, at least in regards to the X-Men, had a time to shine. But in regards to their abilities, their powers, everyone had a time to showcase what they were made of, and they brought it. And lastly on the positives is that this movie actually delivers not only a satisfying ending to this storyline, to this movie, but the Fox X-Men franchise as a whole. I felt that every character had an extremely satisfying ending. I liked where everyone ended up, I liked where the story finished off, and I felt like this was a satisfying conclusion to the franchise as a whole. And now for the negatives. Firstly being Jessica Chastain. Yes, one of the best actresses working today is completely wasted, and her band of villains that follow her, useless. They were lifeless, they were bland. The villains overall in this movie, I just did not like them at all. Of course, when Sophie Turner as Jean Grey was being bad, she was great, but Jessica Chastain and her whole plotline there and everyone that follows her, I felt that was all pretty well trash. And next is the fact that it's the same thing. Eric and Charles, or if you prefer, Magneto and Professor X, it's like Eric does bad things. Charles, Eric, I know there's still good in you. Eric, no there's not. Oh wait, yes there is. By the end of it, they're friends again. Next movie starts, they hate each other. I know there's good in you. Da 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 da. It's the same thing, rinse and repeat, and it has been since First Class. And here we are once again. They're doing this storyline again. And at this point, you just don't care. It's become a running joke in the community that they do this every single movie, and here they do it again. Next is something that's been bothering me since this movie was announced. Didn't Jean Grey absolutely have the Phoenix Force in the end of Apocalypse? Like that moment, you know, when she latches out, unleashes her full powers, and there's literally a giant flaming phoenix, and she single-handedly defeats Apocalypse. Was that not what this is? But then no, come to the beginning of this movie, and I guess none of that happened. They don't mention anything. She doesn't have these extra powers. She's still too weak to even do a few things, or she doesn't have that confidence in herself, despite absolutely obliterating Apocalypse. It's just, again, the continuity in these movies are trash, and it is in full force and full effect here once again. It just doesn't make any sense. And next is the fact that aside from those main three being McAvoy, Turner, and Fassbender, everyone else feels so underutilized and like they have nothing to do. Quicksilver, who arguably had the best moments in both Apocalypse and Days of Future Past, and played by the great Evan Peters, is barely in this movie. Nightcrawler has nothing to do, all of his line delivery, everything else, brutal. Cyclops, another one, Ty Sheridan, great actor, barely given anything to do, and when he is on screen, he just feels bland and lifeless and like he's phoning it in. Again, I chalk that up to the material that he was given and just poor writing. And lastly for the negatives is the fact that in this movie, the the X-Men are famous. Everybody knows who they are. They have them on their t-shirts, they have posters, they have signs, everybody loves them. But to me, at least the way they portrayed it in this movie, it felt super corny. I mean, they literally take direct orders from the president himself. They have the ability, they are capable to do these things, so despite the fact that the humans don't like them, they do these things because nobody else can. Isn't that the whole point, or am I missing something here? So folks, I am actually surprised to report that I found myself enjoying Dark Phoenix a fair amount. Did I love it? No. Did I hate it? No. I actually had a pretty good time, and I feel like people are very unnecessarily shitting on this movie. So with all that said folks, I'm going to be giving Dark Phoenix a 7 out of 10. If you like this video, be sure to like, subscribe, and comment, and let me know what were your thoughts on Dark Phoenix. And as always, thank you so much for watching, and that's a wrap.